All right, Daniel chapter 5, and last week we were driving home and Laura and I were talking, and remember how it talked about how Nebuchadnezzar was like a beast, and then it said his hair was like the wings of an eagle and his fingers like the claws of a bird. And it slipped my mind, but if you know anything about ancient Babylon, what is one of their deities or creatures? It's called a griffin. And what is a griffin? It's part eagle, part lion. And what is a lion? A beast. Because Laura and I were talking, she's like, is a bird a beast? And I'm, well, no, it's a fowl. Well, I guess when it's mixed together, it becomes a beast, a mythical griffin or whatever. So there's a lot more we can get into when it comes to Babylon. The more you study this, the more you go down this rabbit hole, there are so many different gods from Babylon. And a lot of the teachings, a lot of the things from Babylon are still with us today. I went down a rabbit hole pretty deep this week. I had a friend that calls me on the phone and she said, hey, have you seen this video yet? I said, no. And do you know what the new era is? The new age? It's the new age stuff. They're in communication with beings that tell them, we're here to this world to help you. And so she sent me this video and I partly wanted to laugh, but at the same time I was like, whoa. This video was this woman who was new age interviewing let me make sure I get it right, a dragon elf super soldier. That's who this person identified as, a dragon elf super soldier. And supposedly they're in a body and they're, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but that person was talking and saying, and they believed they had DNA of a human and of an elf and of a dragon and they shape-shifted and stuff like that. You laugh, it's funny. But that person was saying, well, my God is so-and-so. And I went and looked that up. And you know what was amazing? That was a Babylonian god that had 7 heads. Whoa. What does that remind you of? Mystery Babylon the Great and the 7-headed dragon and stuff. So, you know, a lot of those gods of ancient Babylon, I believe, have been since then. And they're still around today. And they're trying to bring back power so that they can get back into power. And I just found that fascinating. She mentioned some other name that was another god of Babylon. So as we get into this today, I want to try to show you a little bit more about those gods of Babylon, because this is the center of government at that time. This was the biggest government in the whole world at that time. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of the world. So it was also the center of religion, because a lot of religion came from that. And so you look at that and you look at the parallels of today. What would you say is the biggest country of today? The United States of America. So we're looking today at Daniel chapter 5, the handwriting on the wall. And as we're looking at the fall of Babylon and what happens here, I cannot help but think about this country and how it has fallen. Did you hear what happened this week? Fat Albert found Trump guilty. Right? Fat Albert, his name's Alvin, Fat Albert. So this guy comes with these, I don't even need to get into it, do I? But he comes with these these charges, and they declare him completely guilty. And maybe he'll go to jail. But I remember studying history, and I remember that everyone said, and you know this probably, that in Germany, whenever the Nazis took over, everyone said, uh-oh, that party is in control. And it was all about a certain party over other parties. And they said that the way everyone knew that Germany was taken over was when the Nazis got into the judgeship and they would declare people guilty who everyone knew was innocent. And that's when you knew it was over. The country was taken over. The Nazis had taken over. So and now we're in a third world country. And the Nazis have really taken over, haven't they? Can't even keep the power on, I tell you. So I hope it's still recording. Is it the sound went out for a second or no? Okay, good. So it's amazing to see what's happening in the world today. The judge's name was Merchant. Isn't that merchant? Merchant of death. Merchant, they call him, but that's the root word for merchandise. Remember in the Bible it says they make merchandise of you. So what we're seeing in America, I think, is the handwriting on the wall. This country's shot. They have given themselves over to so many false gods and evil that what we're reading here from 2,500 years ago is what we're about to see in America because of the pride. And what month is this, by the way? So it's just, we did a video on timing. The timing is just How come we're talking about this and it's all coming together? So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but America is on the verge of destruction. And is it too late to turn back? I don't know. I really believe that we're going to witness some bad things. So it's amazing to go to the Bible and read something from 2,500 years ago that's applicable to today. And so we get the handwriting on the wall. Now, these are the main characters that we're going to be looking at, and they all have names that mean something, and they were all named after false gods. Would you name your children after false gods? In America, so many kids are named after names from the Bible because America was founded on the Bible. But this place, it's like they're naming their kids after false gods. So the name Belshazzar, that comes from Baal. And you know what that means? That means Baal or Bel, but we know it's really Baal. That means Baal protects. His name is Baal protect. Well, he really protected him, didn't he? Because you know what happens? He dies. So he didn't get protected by Baal too well, did he? So that's obviously a false god. Now the name Darius means maintains possessions well. Maintains possessions well. And what does he do? He comes in and he gets all of Babylon and maintains their possessions. The name Cyrus means son. The name Nabonidus, okay, see Nab, see Neb. All right, that's from the false god. Nebu, or is it Nabo? Or we'll call him Nebo, you know? Kind of like Finding Nemo, Finding Nebo, I don't know. But this means Nebo be praised. So this false god be praised. That's what his name means. And this, of course, Nebuchadnezzar. I didn't look that up. Looked up what Nebuchadnezzar means, but I know it means something to do with Nebo. So I cannot stress it enough how just utterly evil Babylon was. The people were led by demons, and there were false gods everywhere. And Daniel has to be in this world watching it. And what's amazing is he's the only guy that knows what's going on. So we that are Christians, we're watching all the evil in the world. And if we have a Bible and we believe it, we're the only ones that know what's really going on. So does it make it real to you? I'm hoping as we do this Bible study through Daniel that it gets real to you, because he's going through what we're going through. We're seeing this wicked, evil world. Oh boy, there's so many rabbit holes I can go down today, but I'm going to be careful. Last chapter, Nebuchadnezzar gives his confession. And now we get into chapter 5, and Nebuchadnezzar has died. And this guy, Belshazzar, is in power. But really, this guy is in power. And he is just sitting in the castle while this guy is out fighting battles. Okay? So this is about him in the castle and what happens to him. And let me just briefly read page 42 here so we can get some history. And then we'll get into this. I can't wait to get into this. I'm just afraid I'll go down too deep into some rabbit holes, you know. But by the way, Trump is a type of this guy, Cyrus. So we're starting to see a repeat of some things here. So does that mean this guy is Biden? Wouldn't it be wild if he died in office? This guy died in office? I mean, strange. Yes, what does Nebuchadnezzar mean?
Nebo, protect the crown or protect your servant.
Okay, so his name literally is Nebo, protect me as your servant. Now, when we get done here, I want to go to YouTube, and we're going to go to the channel History Explained, and we're going to watch a 13-minute video. So if you're watching online, go to YouTube, look up History Explained, and then Nebuchadnezzar. Because I want you to see his confession when he took office in comparison to his confession when he got to the end of his life, which we read last time in the last chapter. But it is very telling. I'm trying to point to the fact that all these people worship false gods. That's all they knew. And then when they finally realize there's only one true God, they go, oh yeah, well, he's just one of the gods. And that's not true. He is the creator, and they're just worshiping the creation. And because of that, they were filthy, wicked, evil people that, well, they're just evil. I'll put it that way. All right, here is the history of where we're going. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar was succeeded at his death about 561 by his son, Evil Merodach. So his name was Evil. I mean, that's just a coincidence. Okay. Who at once liberated Jehoiakim, king of Judah, from prison and fed him from his own table. This is in 2 Kings 25. So all this is in the Bible. Isn't it amazing? 2,500 years later, and we know this history like it happened yesterday because it's all written down. We even have pictures of these people. I got a picture here somewhere of King Darius, what he looked like. And it says, after a reign of 2 years, evil Merodach was put to death by conspirators headed by Neriglissar. Okay, weird name. His brother-in-law, who ascended the throne, reigned for about 4 years, being killed in battle in the year around 556 BC. His son and successor, Laborasora Dochakok, I don't know, I give up trying to pronounce these names. An imbecile child was king for less than a year when he was beaten to death. Wow, isn't that nice? Such nice people, godly Christian folks, aren't they? Wouldn't you want to be friends with them? No, you'd always be looking over your shoulder, wouldn't you? It sounds like they're communists. Communists do this, overthrow and kill each other to take over power. And the throne was seized by a usurper, Nabonidus, or Nabonide, another son-in-law of Nebuchadnezzar, who married the widow of Neriglissar, and who reigned from BC 555 to the fall of Babylon in about 538. According to Daniel, Belshazzar, and not Nabonidus, was king of Babylon when it fell. But Berosus, a heathen historian who lived about 250 years after Daniel, in his list of the kings of Babylon, omits the name of Belshazzar and gives the name of Nabonidus, or Nabonidus, as the last king of Babylon. On account of this, the critics attack the truthfulness of the book of Daniel, but its truthfulness has been vindicated by the deciphering of a number of clay tablets. Now, by the way, they left so many records. You can look at all these tablets and have all the names of all these people. Anytime a person tells you the Bible's not true, you just look at them and go, you lying devil. Have you ever read it? That's like saying the college textbook is not true when it's telling history of things that really happened. Now, I'm sure some stuff might not be true, but that's like saying the moon is made of cheese. This is a book of history. And it goes on there talking about Belshazzar and all this. But also, we have the prophet Jeremiah, who foretold that all nations shall serve him, Nebuchadnezzar, and his son and his son's son, until the very time of his land come. Now, when we get into chapter 5, this guy is called the son of this guy. And he's not. He's like the grandson or great-grandson. But is that wrong? I look at my fathers, and I call them my fathers. I would call my grandfather my forefather. So I don't see it's a wrong in the Bible to say so-and-so is your son, even if he was his great-grandson or something like that. But this is one of the kicks against the Bible. Well, he wasn't really his son. But as we have seen that his reputed father Nabonidus was not a son of Nebuchadnezzar, the only solution seems to be that Belshazzar was a son of Nebuchadnezzar and was adopted by Nabonidus to conciliate the royal family, and because of his adoption could be legally called the son of Nabonidus, which then would have been the son of Nebuchadnezzar. Should I read the rest of this? There's so much, I can't go into all this, but get Clarence Larkin's book on Daniel for more. But I want you to know there's always an explanation. And these secular people that hate the Bible will always try to disprove it and say, no, he wasn't really his son. No, he's his grandson. But as far as the Hebrews look at it, that's a son, because what do they say? We're all sons of Father Abraham, right? So if you come from that lineage, they say you're a son of. So there's no problem there, okay? Now, with all that stated, we get the king Nabonidus is out of the Babylon. He's out fighting somewhere. And Belshazzar is in there, and he's getting drunk. I guess the old saying is true, when the cat is gone, the mice will play. Rather than governing the kingdom, he's throwing a big, huge party. And what do you think they're doing getting drunk? You think they're just getting drunk and that's all, playing checkers? No, they're a bunch of pagans, so they're probably doing the evil orgies and all this stuff. So there's the really bad stuff going on, okay? I don't want to get into the details, but I want you to know these people were not saints, okay? They were doing some really horrible things. Now, Daniel at one time was the second ruler of the kingdom. That's back in Daniel chapter 2 and verse 48. Remember, whenever Nebuchadnezzar made him the ruler? So he was the second ruler of the kingdom. We're going to find out in this chapter, this guy goes, well, I'll make you third ruler of the kingdom. Wouldn't that be a demotion? Yeah. So why is that? Because this guy was the king. He was just there in his place. And then he says, I'll make you the third. So I don't care what the secular guys say. The Bible always is true the more you look at it. And you can't help but see it, okay? So to all those people who say the Bible has errors and that's one of the errors. No. The Bible is very clear. Okay. Starting in Daniel chapter 5, verse 1. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Okay, so he's got 1,000 of his lords. So here's 1,000 different people and their families probably, and they're all getting drunk. That's a lot of people. So that's a lot of wine. Now what does he do? Now remember the last chapter, Nebuchadnezzar says the true God is the God of the Jews. He's the high God. Remember that? He should remember this. He should have remembered that. But he does not take the Most High God as his God. He takes it lightly. Oh, he's just one of those many gods. And we see that based upon what he does here and how much disrespect he has for the God of Daniel. Verse 2, Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines drank in them. So how disrespectful. If that is the Most High, true God, why would you go and get his vessels? What are you saying to that God? You're nothing. We're just going to take the... It's disrespect, isn't it? And where were those vessels before? Well, don't you think that maybe Daniel would have, if he's in charge, would have said, now let's take those and put those over here in a safe place, right? So do you think maybe when he did that, maybe he set up like a little mini tabernacle or something? Because everywhere you would go, there was this building to this God, this temple to this God. So did they allow Daniel and his men to have their own little temple to the true God? I don't know. So basically, this guy is going in and desecrating somebody else's God. If the gods are real, then the gods get angry. Well, is the God of the Jews real? Did he get angry? Yeah, we're about to see what happened. But do you see what he's doing here? This is total, complete disrespect. But it also shows that he doesn't care. He doesn't believe in that God. So he wishes to drink from the Lord's vessels from the temple. All right, there's 1,000 lords, little l, but he wants to go to the true Lord, capital L, and grab his stuff. That's just interesting. And so it says here in verse 4, they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, and of iron. Why is that important? Do you remember what we looked at, the statue? The statue was gold, silver, brass, iron. But then it adds of wood and of stone. So that's quite interesting. Now let's look at Deuteronomy 29:17. Got a couple verses I want you to go to here. What they would commonly do is they would make idols. Someone would go and they would carve an idol out of wood, then they would cover it with silver or gold. And then they would worship their idols, and you would think, oh, that's all pure gold. No, it wasn't. It was wood underneath. It was just plated. But Deuteronomy 29:17 says, and ye have seen their abominations and their idols, wood and stone, silver and gold, which were among them. So it's how were they worshiping their gods? Through idols. And oftentimes they would make sacrifices to their God, which was what? A human being. So are they actually killing people to their false gods right there, and all the kids are watching as they do a human sacrifice, you know, like Bohemian Grove or something, to Moloch or something? It's really a horrible scene to think of how evil this is. Now go with me to Revelation chapter 9 and verse 20. There's another verse that talks about idols being connected with wood and stone and gold and silver. So you have gold and silver idols, you have stone idols, and you have wood idols. Revelation chapter 9 and verse 20. And the rest of the men which were not killed by those plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither can see nor hear. What is this? And then it says, neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornications, nor of their thefts. So you see how idol worship goes with drunkenness, goes with fornication, goes with murder, of sacrificing of humans. But the Bible says it's an abomination. But here it makes it very clear, who are they worshiping? They're worshiping devils. Okay, so let it be understood that they were devil worshipers, these people in Babylon. People read this over and just think, oh, Nebuchadnezzar is just like a president, like everybody else. He wasn't a bad guy. He was a devil worshiper named after a false god, okay? I can't stress that enough. Now go to Psalms 115. And these gods, I believe, were real. And I believe they're fallen angels. Did you see UFOs in the Bible that I did this week as the sermon? And I believe that they're still around and that they're trying to come back to get the world to worship them again, just like they did back then. And we who are saved, we see through that. Psalms 115, verse 2 through 8. Psalms chapter 115 and verse 2 through 8. Here's what God thinks about their idols. 115:2. Wherefore should the heathen say, where is now their God? But our God is in the heavens. He hath done whatsoever he hath pleased. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Noses have they, but they smell not. They have hands, but they handle not. We're about to see the true God's hands is shown, writing on the wall. Their hands don't even move. Feet they have, but they walk not, neither speak they through their throat. They that make them are like unto them. That's funny. So is everyone that trusteth in them. So they've got false gods. They're literally worshiping stone and wood and precious metal. All right, so back to Daniel chapter 5. So they're desecrating the things of God, all right, the vessels of God, and devoting it to false gods. Now verse 5. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Now it doesn't say anybody else saw it. It says the king saw it. So the king's there, drunk, and he's like, and all of a sudden he looks up and goes, and he gets really scared. I wonder if he didn't wet himself a little bit. I wonder if he didn't something else. You know that story about the pirate? The pirate's attacking the ship, and he goes, go get me my red shirt and my red pants. Okay. And he fights, and he wins, and he takes over the ship. And he says, what was that all about? He goes, well, if I get shot, well, then they won't see the blood, and they'll still have courage to fight on. And then about that time, somebody says, ship ahoy! And here comes this big, huge, man of war. He goes, go get me my brown pants, because he was scared. So this guy's about to get really scared, okay? In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand. Now, who is that? Well, it says man, but we're about to find out this is Jesus Christ. We saw Jesus Christ in his pre-incarnate state in the oven, right? In the fire. So Jesus could take a body before he came, born of Mary. I don't know how, but this would have been the hand of Jesus writing this. And it's over against the candlestick. What's a candlestick? Fire, light, illumination, but also a type of the Holy Spirit. So it's like the Holy Spirit is writing this. And it's writing it by the candlestick so he can't miss it, so he'll see it where the light is. Upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. He started shaking so hard his knees were going, and he's just like, what is that? And I can just imagine, maybe at first he probably goes, no, I'm just drunk. Is that really there? But then when he saw it, he just started shaking. Now, what is he thinking in his mind? Is he thinking that's the one true God? Or is he thinking, I just made one of the gods mad? That's probably what he's thinking. But he is really scared. His knees smote one against another. So, verse 7, here we go again. Remember what Nebuchadnezzar did. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet. By the way, purple and scarlet is the color of Mystery Babylon, and that's something. And have a chain of gold about his neck, so he becomes a rapper. No, I'm sorry, that was bad joke. And shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Why third? Because he's the second, because this guy's still the king, okay? But he called for the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. 3 different classes, okay? Before we saw it said magicians. You know what an astrologer is? He's somebody who looks up at the stars. You know what the Chaldeans were. They were very smart, but they were very into this devil worship. But then a soothsayer. Do you know what a soothsayer is? The word soothsayer is found, I think it was 8 times when I looked it up. And it almost always refers to somebody who's a false prophet. Did you know that? Balaam was called a soothsayer, but he was a prophet of God, yet he gave false information. So it's almost always somebody who's a false prophet. I looked it up in the 1828. It's one who undertakes to foretell future events without inspiration. So they'll just say what everybody wants to hear. They don't care. It's not God telling them. A prognosticator or a foreteller. So he's saying, can you read the handwriting on the wall? We still in English, we say, can you read the handwriting on the wall when something's like blatantly obvious? So purple and scarlet, I won't go to Revelation 17, 4 and 5, but it's interesting that there's scarlet. And it's connected with the next verse, verse 5, Mystery Babylon. And gold chain, that shows status, that shows money, because gold chains. And if you know Mexican people or Hispanic people, oftentimes they have a gold bracelet and a gold necklace. And I'm just like, why do they do that? Well, that's their money. You know, if they fall into troublous times, they've got something in reserve that they can sell. So I don't know if we should do that. I'd be afraid somebody steal it from us, but that's just in their culture. Put it into something real and have that in reserve if you need to. Have you ever seen that? Yeah. Are you wearing? No, it's kidding. Where's Michelle? Is she wearing one? No, it's kidding. But so that's just their culture. Now, verse 8. Let's see verse 8 here. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing. Boy, I bet they tried, because they wanted that gold chain, and but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then the king, and by the way, why? Well, because it didn't come from one of their gods. So maybe that's why they couldn't figure it out. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. So now we see the other 1,000 people see it too. And they're just like, that's weird. You know, they're probably looking at their glass and thinking, did you put something in here? I'm seeing it. You know, they're looking around and they're going, what is that? Now, why couldn't they read it? Was it in a different language? Was it written in a certain way that it was coded? That I don't know. I looked up what did the ancient Babylonians speak, and they spoke Akkadian, the Akkadian language, and it's cuneiform when they write things down. But we know also Syriac. So Syriac's very close to Hebrew. So in my mind, it's probably written in Hebrew, but it's written in such a way that they didn't understand it, okay? So he is astonished. The 1,000 are shocked. Now, verse 9. Then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him, and his lords were astonished. Verse 10. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. And the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. I forgot to tell you the name of this queen. I think somehow she was connected to Nebuchadnezzar, if I remember right. But she comes in and she says, verse 11, there is a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. Oh, cringe again, right? No, it's not the spirit of the gods. He has the spirit of the one true God. So it's a shame that they don't quite get that. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar thy father, the king, I say thy father, she says it twice. So all these people say, no, he wasn't your father. The Bible says, I say father. It's just funny. So he would be like the grandson of this guy. And that's okay to call him father. Thy father, the king, I say thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. So at one time, Daniel was up here. Now maybe when Nebuchadnezzar died and this guy took over, he said, Daniel, go away. Or something like that. We don't know. But it doesn't sound like Daniel's still there. It sounds like he was forgotten because these people are still worshiping their false gods. All right? Are y'all with me? Now it says, for as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of the dreams and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. Okay? So we see Daniel being called and brought in. Now before I get into that, the queen remembered Daniel. Could it have been that she was, because I think she was Nebuchadnezzar's daughter, if I remember history right, that she was sitting on his knee or something when that happened way back then, and she never forgot that? I don't know, but it took a woman to remember, hey, let's go to the right guy. Let's go to that guy. With all that said, I want to make application to today. What if this took place today? Where in the world do you think they would have been having all this drinking and partying and all that stuff? Probably in a place called Hollywood. And they would have gotten maybe 1,000 stars. Do you know the Babylonians worshiped the stars? And they called their gods by the names of certain stars. And in Hollywood, that's in Los Angeles. Los Angeles in Spanish, the angels. Well, I think these false devils are fallen angels. So let's look over to Hollywood, and what do we see? Well, all right, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll go back to Hollywood here in a minute. But I just want you to think, when I read in this, I'm thinking, that's like those people over there. You know what I mean? Because they're into some of the same cults of this. They follow Madame Blavatsky, and they follow all this kind of stuff. So anyway, we'll get back to Hollywood here in a moment. But back to Daniel chapter 5. And we stopped there in verse 12. So verse 13. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have even heard of thee, that the Spirit of the gods is in thee. No, it's the Holy Spirit of God that's in thee. Man, it irks me that they didn't see this. And that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. Well, if that's true, then why didn't he go talk to him every day? He had a chance his whole life to go talk to the guy, and he never did. Why? Because he wasn't of his party. He wasn't of his religion. He wasn't of his circle of people. He wasn't of the God that he worshiped. And so it says, And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing, and make known unto me the interpretation thereof, but they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee, that thou canst make interpretations, and dissolves doubts. Now if thou canst read the writing, and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shalt be the third ruler in the kingdom. Well, is that what he wanted? Not really. Now back to verse 14. You know what's interesting? It says, And that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. So Daniel had light, understanding, and wisdom. How do you get wisdom? In the Old Testament. Let's go to Psalms 111. If all you had was the Old Testament, and you were seeking for the true God, you would have gone to the Bible, you would have read this, and you would have said, well, wow, okay, I need to find the one true Lord, right? Instead of following a bunch of other little guys. In Psalms 111 and verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever. You should be praising the one true Lord, not that guy's name that means praise, not Nabo or Nebo, right? So the fear of the Lord is how you get wisdom. That's the beginning. Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 7 says pretty much the same thing, but let's go to Proverbs 1:7. And you know, there's a lot of people in this world, they're not afraid of anything, are they? They don't have any fear. They wear t-shirts that say, no fear. Well, no, wait, that was when I grew up around the 90s. I don't see that t-shirt anymore, do you? But you used to see that all the time. No fear. But you should fear. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So what is God calling Belshazzar? A fool. Because he didn't have any wisdom. Because he's following false gods, and he's not afraid of the one true God. Because he goes in there and just takes all of his golden vessels. Didn't even think anything of it. Proverbs chapter 9 and verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. All right, who's holy? The one true God. All these other gods are unholy. Have you ever studied ancient mythology? They call it mythology. It has root in, I think, truth, fallen angels and daughters of men and stuff. It's all about all the orgies, all the illegitimate children they have. And you study these guys, you know, he had a daughter and then he ate her. Just sick stuff. But that all ties back to those right there, right? Fallen angels and devils. So back to Daniel chapter 5. And I love what it says here in verse 17. So he's like, Daniel, man, if you could just tell me the interpretation, well, I'll give you a new suit and a gold chain, and I'll let you be the third ruler in the kingdom. I mean, Daniel says, verse 17, then Daniel answered and said before the king, let thy gifts be to thyself and give thy rewards to another. Doesn't that remind you of the 3 Hebrew children? When they said, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter, O King Nebuchadnezzar, because they're like, I don't care if I die. You said, I'll die if I don't bow. Well, I'm not careful to answer you. Daniel's got that same attitude. Listen, I don't want it. You keep your junk. Here's what's going to happen. So that shows you Daniel doesn't care about that. But what's the problem with the world? The love of money is the root of all evil. All right? A lot of people, it's all about money because their God is money. Did you know there's actually a God of money called Mammon? And Jesus warns against that God. So here's what Daniel says. I love it. He says, then Daniel answered and said before the king, let thy gifts be to thyself and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation. So as we continue here, guess what we find out? He gets it anyway. He said, I don't want it. Well, they give it to him anyway. But he only becomes third ruler of the kingdom for like a couple hours. But go to chapter 6 and verse 1. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the kingdom, and over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first. So he was only going to be third in the corrupt kingdom, but because he took a stand for truth, he became first over here of the presidents under the king. So really second, I guess. But do you see how he took a stand and God even made him more exalted than he would have been? But a lot of people would have just went, yeah, king, whatever you want. Because they're minions that'll do whatever they're told. And because they're corrupt, they love a corrupt system. We shouldn't want a corrupt system. We should want an honest, just, holy system. Holiness is the thing that's missing in the world today. What does that have to do with anything? Holiness? Well, holiness is morality, morals. And what we see today is a lack of morals. Because they don't have morals, they teach you to do evil. And we'll get to that when we look at Satanism and Hollywood. But I wish our country was moral, don't you? Our country was founded on God and the Bible, and people would just, they wanted to preserve their character and their reputation, so they would go out of their way to do right, so no one could say anything bad about them. And if they did wrong, they'd blush because they felt so bad. What do you see nowadays? People living in sin and wickedness and open corruption, and they don't even care. And they'll lie to your face about it and say, no, that never happened. So sad. I mean, what a different world. Which world do you want? Satan's world or God's world? I'd rather take God's world. I'd rather have holiness. Okay, I'm getting off subject here. So here's what happened. Verse 18. O thou king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. So even he says your father, even though we know it was kind of a grandfather. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would he slew, and whom he would he kept alive, and whom he would he set up, and whom he would he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, so people were afraid of Nebuchadnezzar because he was the one world ruler, basically. Remember, he's the type of the Antichrist too, by the way. And they trembled at him. It's interesting because if you go to James chapter 2 and verse 19, it says even the devils believe and tremble when it comes to the true God. So in the spirit world, they know who the true God is. But these people, they're afraid more of a man than of the true God. But anyway, verse 20. And when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride. Did you know pride is a sin? Did you know that? But yet, here we are in June. And guess what? It is Pride Month. Isn't that great? We're right in the middle of Pride Month. Isn't that cool? Yay! Pride Month. Wait. Is that what's in the middle of Pride Month? That's kind of, maybe I didn't mean to write that. It just happens to be right in the middle of Pride Month. Okay, but did you know that pride is a sin?
Yes.
Did you know that? We have to look at this. We have to go to Proverbs 13:10. Let me show you this. A lot of people, like my dad when I was younger, my dad would say, son, I'm so proud of you. And I'd cringe. I'd go, don't say that, Dad. And then, pride is a sin. And he goes, I'm delighted in you. I said, how about what God says in the Bible? Here's my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. How about, son, I'm pleased with you? Yeah, I'll say that, son, And I try not to say pride because it just, I know what you mean. It means I'm happy with you, but it's a kind of a bad word, pride. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 10. Look what it says. Only by pride cometh contention, but with the well-advised is wisdom. So the unwise usually are full of pride. We're in Proverbs, go to verse 11, or chapter 11, Proverbs 11, verse 1 through 3. This is amazing. A false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. We're about to get to the point to where he interprets what's written on the wall, and it has to do with a balance and a weight. It's kind of like, wow, it all ties together. So a false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. When pride cometh, then cometh shame. But with the lowly is wisdom. The integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. And what happened? He was perverse, he was prideful, he was wicked, and he was destroyed. I'm talking about Belshazzar. So back to the book of Daniel. So it's just amazing how the Bible is all intertwined. And pride is a problem. In fact, let's don't go there, but if you're writing it down, write down Job 41:34. Because Job chapter 41 is all about Leviathan, which is Satan. And you know what it says in Job 41:34? He is the king over all the children of pride. So who is the king of people that run around yelling pride? Satan, or the devil. Do you know the pagans would worship their false gods through, how do I say it nicely? Through the thing they did in that little town called Sodom. And so, anyway, oh, by the way, Leviathan. Have you ever seen the upside down star and the Hebrew letters around it? They spell Leviathan. And Satanists, they will tell you Leviathan. So this all ties together. Okay, I'm getting into too much, but I want you to see this. So, pride, king over all the children of pride. Now, verse 20. But when his heart was lifted up, so he's reminding him, this is what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. But when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride, he was disposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was as the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointed over it whomsoever he will. How long, do you remember? Was it like that? 7 years. Type of the tribulation, 7 years. We're going to see another 7 years here in a minute, which is interesting. And thou, his son, really, maybe his grandson, but it's okay to call him son, because, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven. Now let me stop right there. We'll come back and read that, but let me talk about this for a minute. Belshazzar is prideful. Could it be because he was a Satan worshiper? And when you get away from God, there's only one other way to go, to Satan. And Satan fills you up with pride. Do you know what Satanism teaches? If you become a Satanist, your main mantra or saying is, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. So basically, Satanism is do whatever makes you happy. There's no sin. As long as you're happy doing it, go do it. Now, I could go back to this guy named Aleister Crowley. He lived 1875 to 1840 something, 47 or 41, I can't remember. But he was one of the most wickedest men that ever lived. And around that time, there was Madame Blavatsky that wrote Theosophy or whatever, and there were people starting to study and look for these old gods. And that guy, Aleister Crowley, you know what he called himself? He said, I am the beast. Does that remind us of this guy? He's a beast? So Aleister Crowley was one of those that Satanists look at as trying to help found Satanism. Well, there's this other guy who lived from 1930 to 1997 named Anton LaVey. And he wrote the Satanic Bible, and guess when? 1969. Weird that it came out in that year, isn't it? And he wrote this book, and I guess he loved Aleister Crowley. And that's where he says, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. There's another guy. You ready for this? Man, I'm going down the rabbit hole, but we got to go there. Have you ever heard of a man named Jack Parsons? Jack Parsons was born about 1914. and died in 1952. So he didn't have a very long lifespan. You want to have some fun? Look up Jack Parsons on the internet and find out what his real name was. It wasn't John. You know what Jack Parsons' real name was? His name was Marvel Parsons. Isn't that odd? What does that make you think of? Stan Lee and Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics were all about gods that were superheroes that you're supposed to think are so cool. So you see how the devil's trying to introduce these devils back into the world, and people are reading the comics going, oh, that's cool. And you're like, no, that's not cool, dude. Evil? Or I don't know. Marduk? I don't know. There's just a lot of weird stuff. Lev Mar? I don't know. Lev Ram? Oh, Ram backwards is, Satan is due back. Ram, they worship rams and stuff. Anyway, weird, dude. Is there something to that? Jack Parsons worked at a jet propulsion lab in California, but he also got into Hollywood. And he's known for helping start films and things like that. One of the films that was put out during that time was Rosemary's Baby. Yeah, gross film. And guess who was contracted as a consultant on that movie? Anton LaVey. And Rosemary's Baby is all about a woman who gets into this apartment that's run by the cult, and they knock her up so that she'll have the Antichrist. That's what the movie's about. So when you start looking at ancient Babylon, you start looking at Hollywood, you're like, dude, there's so many things that are similar. And there's another guy named L. Ron Hubbard who lived around that time that is big into Hollywood, and he founded Scientology. So Hollywood is the center of what? Well, it's the center of entertainment in America, but I also think it's the center of Satanism in America. And I'm not going to get into Charles Manson and all those things, but it seems like that's where the devil put his seat in America. And if you want to learn about more of that kind of stuff. And Satanism teaches sacrifice humans and free love or free sex, orgies. That's why Hollywood, what do? All they do is make movies about killing people and bad stuff. That's where the adult entertainment industry is out there. Like the Japanese guy that came to America and he watched a movie and he goes, it's all smack, smack, bang, bang, smack, smack, bang, bang. That's all they do. And that's all Hollywood is, smack, smack, bang, bang. So we're looking at the handwriting on the wall, how this place is going down because of their sin. Is this really the handwriting on the wall for America too? Because of all the sin that came from Hollywood? I mean, I could go farther down that hole and I don't want to. Hollywood, holy wood. Why would wood be holy? Unless you're making an idol out of wood. And then you make it about this size and make it look like a human. And you say, you get an Oscar. And you get an Academy Award. Because you're the best actor. Right? What is an actor? Someone who's pretending to be something they're not. Isn't that a hypocrite? So do you see how it all kind of comes together? I wouldn't want to go to Hollywood for anything in the world. I wouldn't want to be an actor in their films or anything, because I see how the devil is behind all that. The silver screen is what they called it. Well, aren't the idols covered with silver? We could go down that rabbit hole a lot more, but we better not. We'll go too far into it. But do you see how it all ties? What are they? They call them Hollywood stars. You probably watch this show, don't you? American Idol. I will never watch that. I know people do, but I don't want them as my idol. Okay? Oh man, I ruined it for you. That's all right. Good. Maybe you needed to be ruined. Maybe that's the handwriting on the wall. What was it?
It's on the television.
It's on the television. And the Bible says television to no man. Did you know that? tell the vision, it says. But yeah, they used to call it the boob tube when I was a kid.
Devil vision.
And when it came out, it only worked with the rabbit ears.
Oh, I remember that.
And it had a forked tail that you had to plug in for it to turn on. Okay, we could go down that road if we wanted to, but and it's called programming. That's what they call it.
Right.
So there's a lot we could get into, man. All right. Anyway, so let's continue here. Back to Daniel chapter 5. But do you see how that's why people, that's all they think about. I want to go to Hollywood and be a star because they're in the flesh. How about we think about God and the Spirit? Because that's the right way to go. So back up to verse 22, Daniel 5:22. And thou his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this. Thou hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee. And thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver and of gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. So it sounds like God is a little bit angry that they stole his golden vessels. You think God cares about those? No. But what he's trying to say is, look, that shows that you don't respect me, you don't honor me, you don't care about me, and that you are so full of pride. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. Now, what was written? All right. If you go to the Hebrew text, it says, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. And this is how it's actually written in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, there's your vowel points and the commas and everything. Now, for those people that like the old Hebrew alphabet, the otiot, I wrote it up here in the otiot, right? The old, but I don't like that. I've always thought that that was when they went into captivity and they saw how the Egyptians wrote things, that they made their alphabet like that. But this is true Hebrew that I think is from the beginning. But it's kind of cool there's a cross there if you look at it that way. But some people think, because Hebrew is so amazing, almost every word in Hebrew comes from a root word with only 3 letters. So maybe the hand wrote up there without the vowel points, and he just wrote it up like this. 3, 3, 3, and 3. Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. So what he wrote was Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. And it had to do with weights. And it had to do with measurements. So let's read that, and then I'll get back to this. But it says, then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Perez. Now Perez is different from Upharsin. But for some reason, it has a different interpretation is the only way. It's something, I'm not going to argue with God. I believe he put this the right way. But when I look at Perez, you know what that reminds me of? Persian. Almost sounds like Persian, Perez. Also sounds like a Hebrew name, like a name, Perez, in Spanish, Perez. Juan Perez de Pineda. Okay, sorry. But then it says, Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. So the interpretation, now there's several ways to look at this, I think. But the interpretation is, God hath numbered thy kingdom. Why does he say it twice? God hath numbered thy kingdom. God hath numbered thy kingdom. Why? Why would he say that twice? Well, there's many times in the New Testament when Jesus speaks, he says, verily, verily, I say unto you. But why would he say twice? Because God judged this guy for his pride. Now God's judging this guy for it. So it makes sense that it's twice. That shows God's grace. He could have just destroyed the whole thing under Nebuchadnezzar, but he said, I'm going to give him another chance. So what does it say? It says, it is tried. So it says, many, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Thou art weighed in the balances and found wanting. So it's like God is weighing him. So it's like a weight. When we think of weight, what do we think of? We think of, well, a lot of times weighing precious metals, because he's mentioning gold and silver and things like that. So it's a balance. So the balance is, it's judgment. But you know, the old way of balancing was like this. And so instead of being balanced, or instead of being this side with God, no, you're way over here on the wrong side, buddy. So it says, thou art weighed in the balances and are found wanting. Thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Now, why is it the Medes and Persians? Remember the picture of the statue, the little Oscar, right? No, of Hollywood. But the head of gold, and then was silver. And what was it? The Medians and the Persians. It was 2. And then comes the brass, and then comes the legs of iron. Why? Because Rome is divided for a while. Or if you look at it as a religion, you've got the Catholic Church on one side and the Greek Orthodox on another. So it's quite interesting what's going on here. So that is the literal interpretation. God hath numbered thy kingdom. God hath numbered thy kingdom. Thou art weighed, found wanting. Thy kingdom is divided. Now, there's a lot of other ways you can look at this. I went to the computer and tried to look at it, and I found something. I'll just omit that because that's not important. But if you're a Jew and you're looking at this, and you see this, you go, huh, that reminds me of a shekel and a mina and a mina and a half mina. Because you look at it, it reminds you of those in a weight, in something that's a weight like a coin. So 1 mina is equal to 50 shekels. All right, so if this is 1 shekel, a mina is 50 shekels. So we've got 250 shekels, there's 101, and a half mina would be 25. So that would take us to what? That would take us to 126 shekels. Does that mean anything to you? Me neither. Right? Whatever. Well, yeah, whatever. But, you can take a shekel, and 1 shekel is equal to 20 gerahs. I guess I'm saying it right. Gerahs. So if you take 126 by 20, you come up with a total of 2,520 gerahs. Now, does that mean anything to you? Probably not. You're just like, that's just a number. Well, he gives this twice. What if he's saying divide that number? If you divide 2520, divide that by 2, you know what you come up with? 1,260. Now, what does that remind you of? In the book of Revelation, it says the tribulation is 42 months, 42 months. 1,260 days, 1,260 days. 3.5 years, 3.5 years. So if that's 3.5 years, then that's 7 years. If you look at it as years, as 2,520 days on a 360-year calendar, that reminds us of 7 years. Weird. Isn't that strange? Now, what happens after this? After this, in comes someone and captures the kingdom and kicks them out. And then guess what? Another guy takes over. And that other guy that takes over, this guy, he tells the Jews, now you can go back to your nation. And it's exactly 70 years later, just like the Bible says. So, I look at that and I see another 7 years. And I go, wow, that's kind of cool. Is there anything else to that? Well, are you ready for this? Man, I don't know. Should I put this up here? This may or may not be anything, but you go online, this is what some people say. Okay? And it's quite interesting. This is 5220, right? 2520. Let's do it that way. 2520. If that's years, what happened in 553 BC? What we're about to read, King Darius and King Cyrus, they worked together. Cyrus was a Persian, Darius was a Mede. And if you believe the accounts, Darius was the uncle of Cyrus. And they were two heads, and they were working together. But in 553, Cyrus conquered the Medes, and now it was only the Persian Empire. 553 BC. All right? Well, that's nothing, but let's take 2,520 years, and let's do the math. That brings us to this date. Did anything special at all happen for Israel on that date? No. Oh, wait. Yeah. I think it was called what? The 6 Days War? When Israel got a whole bunch of terror. So just another huge coincidence that here a Jewish prophet says something, and then you kind of do a little bit of math and something big happens for the nation of Israel. Just another coincidence. Or maybe, just maybe, the true God, the creator of the universe, is the God of Daniel. And you need to get rid of all those other gods because they ain't nothing. They're nothing. They're less than nothing. So, there's so much more we could get into. I'm skipping some stuff. There's just too much to get into. Okay, so let's go back to Daniel chapter 5. And let's finish it up here. So, when we look at it on face value, he just says, well, it says this and the interpretation is this. But it has to do with something being weighed in the balances, and your first thought is, what's weighed? Well, gold or silver. And so the Jewish mindset is, well, let's think of this in shekels, and it brings you to this, and it brings you to this. So, the Jews are already into numbers. They believe in gematria and stuff like that. So they're looking at all this saying, what does this mean? And is it pointing us to 7 years of tribulation or something like that in the future? All right, so it says, verse 29, then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night was Belshazzar the king of the Chaldeans slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Darius was old, and who took over after him? Cyrus. And so Darius and Cyrus are usually mentioned together a lot in history. And Cyrus eventually took over, and Cyrus was prophesied of in the Bible. Did you know that? By name. So let's read a couple things here real quick. 2 years after the death of Nebuchadnezzar, a war broke out between the Babylonians and the Medes that continued off and on for over 20 years. At last, Cyaxares, the king of the Medes, who was called Darius, summoned to his aid his nephew Cyrus of the Persian line. And in the 17th year of Nabonidus, and the 3rd year of Belshazzar, Cyrus laid siege to the city of Babylon. The Babylonians entrenched behind the impregnable walls of the city, with provisions to last them for years, and sufficient tillable soil to supplement the supply. They scoffed at Cyrus and made light of the siege. So they're inside thinking, we're safe, ain't nobody going to get in here. Let's get drunk. And they did. Hence they breathed a false security, for God had decreed over 175 years before that the city should be taken by a man not then born, but named by name as Cyrus. And this is in Isaiah 44:28. So turn over to Isaiah 44. Don't you tell me the Bible's not true. We have the historical record, and we have it in the Bible telling you it was going to happen before it even happened. Isaiah 45, verse 1. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the 2 leavened gates, and the gates shall not be shut. So you can continue reading down to verse 4. But that guy is named in the Bible years before he was born. So realizing the futility of taking the city by siege, Cyrus decided to use strategy. He decided to drain the river Euphrates that flowed through the city and march his soldiers in on its bed. To this end, some say he constructed a large artificial lake miles away. Others say he drained the river, but where they couldn't see him doing it. And I won't read the rest of it, but guess what happened?
Also in 44:28, the verse right before.
Right.
The one Matt said, it's also there.
Let's look at that real quick. 44:28.
He talks about he's a shepherd.
44:28. Good job. Yeah. And look what it says, verse 27. That saith to the deep, be dry, and I will dry up thy rivers. It's prophesying 175 years before what happened. And historically what happened is Cyrus said, well, we can't get in, so let's drain the river. And where the river flows into the city, when it's dry, we'll just walk underneath through the hole. And that's what they did. And that's been prophesied in the Bible. Wow, good job. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. Because Cyrus was the one that told Ezra and Nehemiah, were the 2 guys that went back. One built the city, one built the temple. But he told them, go on back and rebuild. So don't tell me that the Bible is just some made-up book by man. It is definitely the true God. And I could continue reading there, but I won't, of the history. But history is fascinating, and you need to read how he went in and he took that over. I could go a lot more into all this. Here is a picture of King Darius. That's what he looked like. And today, the Jews in Israel, they look at Donald Trump as their new Cyrus. Did you know that? They minted a coin with Cyrus and Trump. Because old Trump comes along, and what does he do? He says, your capital is Jerusalem. And they move it over there. So, how interesting. Here we are in America, and there's a river down there. and there's a whole lot of people just walking across the river and coming in. Is that going to lead to the downfall of this country? Oh, hope not. I hope everyone that comes gets saved. Wouldn't that be great? But I don't think that's the plan. I think the enemy has let them come across the river to come in to take over our country. And if you allow the third world to come into your country is going to become third world. And so that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Well, I guess that's a good place to stop. Any questions or comments? Anybody? Isn't history awesome? All right, if we don't have any questions or comments, pull up YouTube if you will. I want you to look up History Explained Nebuchadnezzar. And it's just a 13-minute video. And let's look at the history of Nebuchadnezzar and the actual words that he said when he became king. Because I told you before, I don't think he ever trusted only in the true God. I think he just added them to the list of all his gods. And so we'll close with that.